What's the campaign been like? You said on stage, you gave a great speech, like I said a moment ago. You said that this campaign has transformed the Green Party. It's changed how you're perceived nationally. What did you mean by that?
There's so many things. It's just the way we work internally as well. Do you know, we've gone from a standing start to organising something that looks like a winning machine. Do you know, we've organised thousands of volunteers coming up, leaflets coming out every single day, brand new leaflet every couple of days, leaflet rounds, how we're going to organise. You know, we had no data when we started this. We've now got a track record that we can build from. And if we can continue this sort of momentum, we're going to be unstoppable. We're going to be something really, really powerful.
Do you think that's the case across the country, or is it like a by-election phenomenon now? Do you think you guys are the new Lib Dems, the by-elections? You can just get thousands of people all of a sudden to, like you say, you know, standing still to all of a sudden really professional campaign, ton of data, ton of voter contact?
I think the by-elections something that because it's just a one constituency, it's managed to get everyone together. But there's so many lessons that we've learned from this. You know, we can take the lessons from this around how to organise, how to get into communities, how to get our message out, what's effective, what's not effective, and we can use that in a general election. You know, we've got lessons that we can transplant everywhere across the country, and we can really, really be powerful.
You said before we started recording that these kinds of areas, when you're campaigning in them with Labour, it can get really nasty. What did you mean?
I mean, just the way some of the Labour activists behave. So last week I was giving a speech in Longsight Market, and then one of the Labour activists jumped in front of my microphone to try and shout me down while I'm giving a speech. You know, really big, bulky guy. I'm not the biggest in the world, but he thought he could intimidate, you know. Today we were outside the polling station. We had Labour's activists coming and swearing at us, do you know.
What were they saying?
I'm not going to repeat what he said.
But what was it, personal insults to you or about the party? Or
personal insults to me, to our activists, calling us the C word, calling us, you know, effing this, effing that, you know, trying to intimidate voters as they were walking in. Lots and lots of negative campaigning. And then they had this battle bus, a big advertising hoarding that was going around with some really, really defamatory statements on there. Things like the Green Party wants to turn your daughters into prostitutes. You know, this kind of thing. It's really, really toxic. And that's just a sign of desperation. You know, they're so desperate to try and hold on to this seat. They're going to do anything, any dirty trick that they can use to try and win. And hopefully it's not going to be proved fruitful.
Do you think that Labour, if they're in something of a death throw, at least under Keir Starmer, do you think they might just toxify British politics? Because right now Labour is accusing the likes of Reform of doing that. But if you've got Reform doing that in one area, and even Labour would contest as much, and then Labour are seemingly wanting to take the ship down with them, by which I mean British democracy and any idea of fair and decent elections, does that make you worry about what the May elections are going to be like? I mean, if this is just a sort of a glimpse of that.
I think this is Labour behaviour for a long time. This happened to me in my ward when I ran for election. You know, all of this same kind of messaging, same kind of efforts, intimidation of activists, even pushing and shoving. This kind of stuff is quite standard, I think, for a lot of campaigns like this. I've witnessed it in my ward. I know other people have witnessed it, and I think it'll continue, and I think they'll get more and more desperate and they'll lash out even more.
And on the you talked about sex work policy, but on the drug stuff as well. I mean, I've been told by people that there were individuals who happen to be Muslim who were planning to vote Green. They heard some of that stuff, particularly on drugs, and then they went and voted Reform, which presumably wasn't Labour's intention. But was that something that you experienced when you were talking to people on doors and on the street?
I mean, there's so much negative reporting around our drugs policy over the last few days. look, we're talking about taking a public health approach. Just like they did in Glasgow, just like they did in Portugal, and they saw drugs deaths go down. I represent a ward in Gipton Hare Hills. We've got drug dealers on pretty much every street corner. What we want to do is take away that incentive for organised crime to sit behind it. Exploitation of young people, both in terms of people who are taking drugs and those people who are selling drugs. We need to have opportunities for people, places where they can go out and find careers, build themselves up. Drugs is not the answer. If we can create an environment where we take away that criminality, we give them options, we say, okay, right, those people who are taking drugs, let's give them a public health approach, give them support, help them where they need it, rehab, all of that sort of thing. We can tackle the problem, because ultimately that's the aim, right? How do we reduce drug use? And how do we make it safer? Right, that's the ultimate aim. And what we're doing right now isn't working. So if we can do something that gets rid of the criminality, the streets become safer. If we can make sure that the drugs that people are taking are licensed, regulated, just like alcohol, people's lives aren't being put at risk, and then we give them the rehab and the support that they need, we can wean them off and give them better options. It's a real sensible way of looking at things, because the current way just isn't working.
But the reality is that's probably cost you votes here, hasn't it? Particularly with more, with older voters, with maybe minority communities, with, maybe people that you were going to get, like I say, from Labour have ended up going to Reform. It has been a factor, hasn't it?
I mean, the conversations I've had, when they've heard us talk about it and really talk about it, they've said, okay, that's actually something worth thinking about and that's worth considering. What's cost us votes, potentially, is the negativity and the lies that have been spread around it. We want to give crack cocaine. The accusation is that the Green Party wants to give crack cocaine to children. And that's just a blatant lie. It's just blatant falsehood.
How does it make you feel? You said about the vehicle going around saying turn your daughter into a sex worker, prostitute, and we want to give, the Green Party want to give drugs to children. You're a person of faith. Mm-hmm. I am as well. As a dad of a girl as well, if somebody accused me of that, I'd be incredibly angry, Do you want to hold the people that are saying these kinds of things about you and your colleagues accountable, and how would you do that?
There has to be some sort of better regulation around what's said during political campaigns, because we can't have just blatant falsehood. People are not confident in politicians, they're not confident in the political system, right? If people are spreading falsehoods like this, then how do the public know that they're getting the truth? If we're going to run campaigns, we have to be ethical. And that's just something that I haven't seen from the Labour Party in this campaign.
So Reform have started to claim there's an issue around family voting. There are electoral irregularities. I don't know if you've seen this.
I've seen the claims, but what electoral irregularities are they actually talking about? We're talking to one of the returning officers, presiding officers, and she was responsible for every single ballot that was issued, every single ballot that was used. She's going to be held accountable for every ballot that's unused. She's going to have to, the boxes are sealed, they're being taken from the polling office to the count under security, under watch, all the time. They're tagged. No one can tamper with that. So what irregularities?
Well, they're claiming family voting, which is a law that was tightened up in 2023. There's a volunteer organisation. I believe they're called the Democracy Volunteers. I'd never heard of this organisation before, but they exist. They've got board of trustees, etc., etc. They are an organisation, and they're claiming that 32 people were involved in family voting. In other words, people were conferring their choices, which isn't the worst kind of electoral crime, but it's still prohibited in terms of elections in this country, and it's something that's been seized on by Reform and the right, seemingly to discredit a result which right now would indicate they're not very confident about winning, but it feels like something they might use to discredit the process more generally.
I think that's just a sign of desperation. You know, they're really. I think the results haven't gone the way they thought they would, and I think it's just a sign of desperation. I've knocked on doors where the father has voted for Labour, and the mother and the children have voted Green. So if there's such thing as family voting, it hasn't obviously worked in those families where families have decided to go different ways. Everyone's going to discuss what policies they agree with, what direction they want the country to travel in. Do they want to stay in, do they want to be stuck in time, or do they want to actually move forward and come up with some fresh ideas? People are going to have those debates. That's expected, and that should be encouraged. What we shouldn't do is say, right, okay, people dictate how others vote. Right, people shouldn't be able to influence and force others to vote in a particular way, and I don't think that's happened. And that's one of the proofs that I've seen is the fact that families have voted in different ways, and it's a credit to democracy. And I think that's only happened because of the campaign that the Greens have run.
Gaza. Has that been a big issue here? I mean, this is, we're in Manchester, Gorton and Denton. We're in the northwest of England. Matt Goodwin will say, why the hell are you talking about Gaza? We're in England. There's so much going wrong, as I'm sure you'd agree, here in northwestern Europe. Why are you so concerned about the Middle East? But it has been an issue nationally. Has that fed through to the debate here locally?
And one of the first leaflets we put out was about the NHS. We put out leaflets about the two-child benefit cap. We put out leaflets about the state of the roads and access to GP services. So we're talking about issues that affect everyone, right? A lot of people are concerned with what's happened in Palestine and in particular the genocide in Gaza. So it's right that politicians reflect the issues that concern residents. If we don't do that, then we're doing an injustice to them. So if they're worried about Gaza, then we should actually talk about that. If they're worried about the NHS, we should talk about that. We should be their representatives, and they should feel confident that we represent their views effectively.